Alright, welcome back to the Supercoach Nuff channel. In this video, we're going to take a look at the NFL fantasy and go through, I guess, my 2023 preseason rankings. I am by no means an expert in this format, just an avid fan that does follow a bit of the NFL fantasy content online. Um, so I guess, these are a lot of these rankings will be very similar to what you see out there from other people. I guess there's a couple of individual preferences and thoughts on particular order of players. But I thought particularly, I guess, for my audience, which is mostly, I suppose, NRL centric, that might not have played it before, we'll go through, I guess, just some of the top options to look at. If you are getting involved with NFL fantasy, whether it's in drafts or we'll also look at the sports deck fantasy for NFL, which is a bit closer to Supercoach. It's not open yet, but when it is, we'll definitely get in there and make a team. But yeah, so without further ado, we'll get stuck in. And the first position we'll look at is running back. So I guess traditionally running back is one of the most popular positions for NFL fantasy, given that they are somewhat heavily involved with running the ball, which gets you points for meters run, um, obviously getting touchdowns, that sort of thing as well. But I guess the elite running backs are also very good as pass catching options. So they can also get points for receptions, which is catching the ball, and then obviously the meters gained on that reception as well as receiving touchdowns. Um, so I guess a prime example of that is the number one ranked player I've got here, Christian McCaffrey, plays for the San Francisco 49ers. He's been, I guess, one of the top NFL fantasy options for a few years now. Did have some injuries a couple of years ago, which put a few people off. He was also playing for the Panthers, which are probably a bit of a lesser quality team in the league, but he did make the move halfway through last year to the 49ers. And I guess he just adds that extra dimension to their attack. Um, got them pretty much all the way through to the Super Bowl there. Um, I think, or was it the championship game? I can't remember. See, this is how little I know about it. I know they got very deep into the playoffs with what was essentially a nobody quarterback in Brock Purdy. But McCaffrey was a big reason for that. He can run the ball, he can catch the ball. Um, so yeah, he'll be the most popular running back. I think this year going off the draft boards very quickly. So if you do have a top pick, he's definitely one I'd consider. And number two, I've got Austin Eckler from the LA Chargers. Used to be San Diego Chargers. Um, and he's very much like Christian McCaffrey. He's very good at receiving passes as well as running the ball. Um, the Chargers have had some issues with their attack in the previous couple of years, and they have relied heavily on him. And I guess it's just based off the runs on the board that he's got the shout at number two. Because I do like the pick at number three there with Saquon Barkley from the New York Giants. I guess he sort of has that upside that Eckler has. We'll run the ball a lot. We'll probably be one of the primary pass targets as well, given the Giants don't have a lot of options at wide receiver. But he has been a bit more injury prone and hasn't put the runs on the board as such. So, yeah, for that reason, I've gone with Eckler over him. But, if I was picking, I'd probably target Barkley over Eckler. So maybe already there's a flaw in the rankings, but just want to disclose that for the other people out there. At number four is Bijan Robinson from the Atlanta Falcons. So probably the most hyped up rookie pick this year. Um, the Atlanta Falcons are pretty well known for running a run heavy game. And Bijan Robinson was elite in college in terms of running as well as pass catching. So, in a team that again has a couple of weapons, but nobody too major, you think that he'll get a lot of work. Um, and a lot of people do have him, this high or even as a number three running back selection. At number five, got Derrick Henry from the Tennessee Titans. Uh, I guess he's just a workaholic. Um, I think he usually has the most runs for the year. He does get some catches as well, probably not as many as those elite guys we've just talked about. Um, but I think he may be, slightly held back this year by DeAndre Hopkins joining the Titans as a wide receiver there. He'll definitely command some targets and some workload. So I don't think they'll be as heavily reliant on Henry, but I guess that could also create a few gaps for Henry as well if there's more attention put on Hopkins. So, um, and just based off the work rate, I think he's a really reliable pick. At number six, we've got Jonathan Taylor. So probably, this might seem quite low, considering it was only 2 years ago he was the number one running back in NFL fantasy. But is having some issues with the Colts at the moment around his contract. Wants to get paid more, and probably rightly so, given what he's shown over the 3 years. Admittedly, he was injured last year and missed a bit, but I guess he is probably their star player for the Colts. So it seems weird that they don't want to pay him. Um, there's talk about maybe he'll just sit out, that sort of thing, but then it means he doesn't get paid. So at anything for this year, and they can withhold his contract over. So he will play. I guess maybe just that as a distraction might limit his upside. But if he can, sort the contract out, or even if they end up deciding to trade him, he could easily slide up into those top sort of three ranks overall. So, one to sort of keep safe in your drafts, but definitely, has the upside that we love. Number seven, gone with Nick Chubb from the Cleveland Browns. So I guess again, sort of in line with a few of these other guys, he's the main man there. They do have, Amari Cooper as a decent wide receiver option, and Deshaun Watson is going to get a full preseason with the team, which will be helpful. But you still imagine that Nick Chubb will get a lot of the workload, particularly in the running game. So, he's super consistent. He's one that's probably not the most exciting pick, but solid base with potential for upside. Ranked number eight, I've got Tony Pollard from the Cowboys. So he's one that a lot of people are sort of high on this year as being a bit of a breakout contender. Um, I guess his main competition there at the Cowboys, Ezekiel Elliott, has been moved on. So it looks like he's going to be the go-to guy there in terms of the running back position at the Cowboys. They do have some good wide receivers, so his receiving upside might be limited. But I guess from what he's shown when he has been given the main running back job, that he could be in the running back one sort of conversation this year. Number nine got Josh Jacobs, so he was actually the number one overall last year in terms of fantasy scoring for running back. But I guess the reason why he's listed at number nine probably just comes back to his opportunity in the passing game. So he did get a lot of opportunity last year, but they have got a change in quarterback, a couple other players that, and coaches and the like that have been shuffled around. Um, so yeah, so again, he's a bit like the safe pick. He will get enough work and he'll be there or thereabouts, but he probably just doesn't have that elite upside. I guess the reason why he did so good last year was a lot of the other players did miss games through injuries, and he was pretty solid throughout. At number 10, Ramondre Stevenson from the Patriots. So I guess similar to Tony Pollard, probably hasn't had the opportunity to be the out and out man at the in the team in terms of running back, but he now has that. Damian Harris has moved on. Can't remember which team. So yeah, it looks like he's going to be the one that does the bulk of the work. And again, the Patriots are a team that probably don't have a lot of other options, so he could become a real sort of workhorse option. Number 11, and this is probably, I guess, the controversial one when you look at other top 12s that the experts that would pull out. But I've gone with Najee Harris from the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it was quite disappointing last year in his second year. However, he was essentially playing the whole season injured. So, uh, getting a full preseason in, and he's the player that can take receptions as well as run the ball. Um, so yeah, so I'm expecting to bounce back from him, and I think he could be, quite a bit of value because again, a lot of people aren't looking at him in their top 12, so you could probably get him at a discount in, I guess if you're doing snake drafts like the sort of third round, um, or if you're in auction, which is probably where I tend to sit a bit more. I think you can get some real good value from him. And Joe Mixon to round off the top 12 from the Cincinnati Bengals. So I guess with the Bengals, the issue is there's so many great receiving options, and they do have a quarterback who loves to throw the ball. So it does limit his opportunities with the ball, but he is a very good running back. Um, and again, it's probably just, if he had more opportunity, if he was, like a Tony Pollard or Ramondre Stevenson and the main man of the team, he would definitely be, pushing up towards the top six even. But, a safe option in the top 12. Onto the wide receivers, and number one, I've got Justin Jefferson from the Minnesota Vikings. So um, I guess the thing with wide receivers this year, traditionally, they've probably been put on the back burner a bit compared to running backs. Um, but I guess given the sort of explosion in terms of consistency and output of some of these guys, such as Justin Jefferson, they're very quickly getting snapped up with the top sort of two, three picks in snake drafts, and obviously in auction they'll be highly sought after too, and you'll have to pay a fair price. But yeah, with Justin Jefferson, he's the main man of the Vikings. The 2 3 years that he's been in the league, I can't remember exactly, but he's been really good every year. I got a mate that I guess runs the NFL fantasy league that I got into at first. He's a massive man crush on Jefferson, and yeah, he probably pays a lot, but make sure he gets him in every year, and he just does the job. Jamar Chase, and I just realised I probably spelled that wrong, but I forgot to check that. That's my bad. From the Cincinnati Bengals, so I guess yeah, I was saying about my mate has a bit of a man crush on Jefferson. Jamar Chase is one of mine. I drafted him sort of sight unseen 2 years ago as a rookie, um, and then quickly found out that he linked up with his best friend in the quarterback Joe Burrow. They're at the Bengals. They played at college together, and so essentially, he is the number one target there at the Bengals. But he can back it up too. He gets the job done. Um, it's not within it's not outside the realm of possibility that he is their wide receiver one for the year. But I think Jefferson probably has a bit less competition there, which is I guess why I'm leaning towards him. But Jamar Chase is definitely one to get if you have the opportunity. Number three, I got Cooper Kupp from the LA Rams. Um, so a couple of years ago, he really broke out and became wide receiver one. And was probably close to on track to doing that last year too, but did get a bit of an injury towards the back end of the season. Um, yeah, the Rams, they really just target him quite a lot, and he can handle the workload, gets the job done. And I guess probably the one thing that's against him compared to the other two above him is just his age. He is a bit older, so you'd imagine he might slow down a bit, but he'll still be definitely in that conversation for wide receiver one. Number four, I've gone with Stephon Diggs at the Bills. So I guess most people wouldn't quite have him that high, but he's just super consistent, and I guess that's why I've ranked him that high. He's got a great quarterback with Josh Allen throwing him the ball. He's the easily the number one target there at the Bills, and the Bills are quite a good offensive side all around. So you put all that together, and it means that he might not necessarily have the upside of some of these guys, but he won't let you down. Number five, I've gone Tyreek Hill. So again, maybe a little bit biased with the older guys. He could definitely outscore Diggs on any given day. He can outscore all of these guys, and he has got runs on the board. Particularly from his time at the Kansas City Chiefs, but he now plays at the Miami Dolphins. Um, and yeah, he just gets it done. So great pickup there if you can get him. I guess another great pickup that will always do the business is Devontae Adams. So out of the Raiders, transferred there last year, and a lot of people thought, well, he's going away from a gun quarterback at Green Bay to, an average sort of one. But, he just gets open, gets the targets, gets the receptions. So I can't see that changing, even though they have changed quarterbacks yet again this year. I think, he's pretty much, uh, yeah, change up proof, essentially. He can work with anyone. Number seven, I've gone with CD Lamb from the Cowboys. So again, a really good offensive team, a really solid quarterback that loves to throw, and he is the main target there. So um, yeah, solid and consistent. Maybe not quite at the level of the top six, um, but I think he's one that will certainly do the job as a wide receiver one type option for your team. Garrett Wilson from the New York Jets is number eight. And I guess this selection is based on the fact that Aaron Rodgers has made the move to New York. So far and away the best quarterback that Garrett Wilson's ever had. I'm pretty sure he was a rookie last year. If not, he was a rookie the year before. So he hasn't been in the league that long to really have a good quarterback. But even with some average quarterbacks, he was doing the business last year. So you'd imagine he's going to make that step up to wide receiver one this year, which is what a lot of the experts are tipping as well. At number nine, I've gone with Amon-Ra St. Brown, probably one of the coolest names going around in the NFL from the Detroit Lions. And, I guess in line with all of these other guys, he is the main man there at the Lions. They traded their tight end, TJ Hawkinson, midway through last year, who used to take quite a few targets. Um, DeAndre Swift has moved on as well. They're running back from last year. So while there is a couple of new pieces in there, you'd think, particularly early on in the season, that Jared Goff would target St. Brown quite a lot. And then, if he does start to fade, you can maybe, trade up to a player on the way up, that sort of thing, if you need to. But, he could just with or maintain the range throughout the season. So got him at nine. I got AJ Brown at 10, which is probably a bit low considering how highly I rate him. But I think the thing with the Eagles is that they've just got such a stacked offense this year. So they've brought in DeAndre Swift, as I said. Um, you've also got um, Devonta Smith as a target. Jalen Hurts, he loves to run the ball. They've got Dallas Goddard, who's a pretty handy tight end. So there's a lot of mouths to feed in the Eagles' offense. Um, AJ Brown is the number one target. He moved to the Eagles last year because of the friendship he has with Hurts. So I guess, in drafts, I am looking very heavily at that stack, AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, as a way of, maximising the points. When the Eagles go well, they're both going to go well. So maybe I should have had him a bit higher, but maybe I was just trying to keep him safe so no one tries to take him off me. At number 11, I've gone with Chris Olave from the Saints. So maybe a bit higher than what some of the experts have him. They probably have him more as a high wide receiver two option. But I just think, given that he is the main man there at New Orleans, Alvin Kamara is going to miss the first few weeks with his suspension. Michael Thomas is a walking injury, it would seem. There's a good chance that he will start the season strong, a bit like a Amon-Ra St. Brown. Um, so that will you know hopefully hold him in good stead throughout the year. Um, and I guess with the upgraded quarterback as well, there'll probably be a few more targets available to him. So he's my pick for the one that sort of does elevate up into the top 12 sort of conversation. And at number 12, I've gone with DK Metcalf at the Seahawks. So, um, you know, is the main wide receiver there at the Seahawks. I think last year he was written off a lot because everyone didn't rate Geno Smith as a quarterback, but he's certainly proven to be good enough. Um, so I think he's sort of the one where, well, I guess from even from Chris Olave down, you can sort of make up your own mind about who you've got as those last wide receiver one options. This is the way I've gone. So I guess the next one is the quarterbacks, and so I guess for a lot of people that don't play a lot of NFL fantasy, you may think the quarterback is where it's at. They're the one that run the show, and they certainly are. But because you can only usually have one in your team, and depending if you're playing, say, the standard is a 12-team league, which is why we've got top 12s here. But if you're playing a smaller league, well then, there's plenty of great options to go around. I guess where quarterbacks do become more interesting is if you play a super flex. So a super flex is like a normal flex position, which can be running back, wide receiver, tight end. But a super flex can also be a quarterback. So once you can start having more than one quarterback in your team, the value of quarterbacks do go up because they do actually score more than running backs and wide receivers. But I guess, if you only need one, you can sort of wait and try to fill out the other positions that need more players to fill, so your wide receivers and running backs. So, yeah, if you're playing with a single quarterback, you don't need to go too early. In terms of snake drafts, you're looking at least round three. With auctions, maybe 10% to 20% of your budget at most for the elite guys, but you definitely don't need to go big. In the super flex, you might need to go a bit bigger. In saying that, number one, I've got my man Jalen Hurts. So I've drafted him the last 2 years, and have pretty much picked him up in every league that I play in, and he's never let me down. He's a supremely mobile quarterback. So I guess with the quarterbacks, one thing you want to look at is not just their ability to throw the ball, and obviously if they have players that can catch and that around them, but if they can also score points through running. And Jalen Hurts is one who likes to run a lot, scores a lot of touchdowns. So rather than giving it to the running back to score from 2 yards out, he'll usually just back himself to get into the end zone. He's got a massive squad on him too, which the leg drive and the power sort of helps with those close yard touchdowns. That running game, I just massive man crush on him, even more so than Jamar Chase. So he's my number one, but I can't begrudge anyone who would go with Josh Allen as their number one either. He's been, I think, the top quarterback in fantasy for the last few years. My mate who's on Justin Jefferson, he's also, always looking to get Josh Allen uh, for that reason. Again, really mobile quarterback, really big build for a quarterback too. So you can take the hits and that sort of thing. But very good passer as well. And you got Stephon Diggs and company that do the business and catch the ball for him. I guess another reason why I have Jalen Hurts is, as I've talked about, the Eagles' offensive sort of skill players, I guess we call them, are pretty stacked. We've already talked about AJ Brown. We'll talk about probably a couple of more guys in a bit. But yeah, plenty of targets for him to hit as well as his running upside. That's where it's at. All right, but enough about him. We'll move on to number three. Patrick Mahomes, probably the most famous name in the game. Supreme passer of the ball. And I guess other than his tight end, which we'll talk about in a bit, it doesn't matter what wide receivers, running backs he has. He just, can pick any of them out at any time, and can run the ball too. He probably doesn't do it as much as the other guys because of his ability to throw the ball. Um, but yeah, he's a pretty complete package. So um, yeah, if you can't get those first two, yeah, try and get yourself a bit of Paddy Mahomes. Number four, I've got Lamar Jackson from the Ravens, so another super mobile quarterback. Probably just, I guess, the downside is he can pass the ball. He probably just doesn't always have the greatest targets to aim for. But you know, mobile quarterbacks are always going to score well, so we've got him at four. At number five, another mobile quarterback in Justin Fields. So I guess big things were sort of talked up about him last year, and he started off a bit slow, but in the back end of the season, once he started to get the groove of the NFL, he started to look really good, and you'd imagine he's only going to get better in his second year. So yeah, and I think the Bears are a bit more improved. They've brought in DJ Moore as a late sort of wide receiver option, which will definitely help him out. I think they've improved their offensive line as well, so he'll have a bit of protection, which will help with the running and the passing. Um, so yeah, so definitely one that I'd be keen to have a look at if I couldn't get one of those elite guys. Justin Herbert, number six, so from the Chargers. Um, I guess another player who was sort of a bit hindered by injury last year. We've already talked about, Austin Eckler had to do a lot of work. Part of that was because Justin Herbert was injured. Um, but, he is sort of in the same sort of category as the elite guys with his passing and his ability to run. Again, he's not an elite a runner of the ball, but he's a very good passer. So put those two together, and he's definitely in that top six conversation. Number seven, we've got Joe Burrow from the Bengals. So I guess a bit like Hurts, he's got a pretty supreme offensive skill player set to throw to, with a couple of great wide receivers and a decent running back he can use as well. But I guess he's not, out of the guys we've talked about so far, he's definitely the least inclined to run the ball. So, just off the back of his passing, though, he's good enough for our top 12. Trevor Lawrence, or Touchdown Jesus, from the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it was number one drafted a couple of years back. And, I guess towards the back end of last year, he really started to look like he fit in the making the grade. The Jaguars have picked up Calvin Ridley this year, which is a really nice pickup, a wide receiver. Um, and yeah, so I think this is the year where, he'll definitely look at breaking into the sort of elite quarterbacks, and the Jags are predicted to go quite well. So we'll put him at eight, and then just Deshaun Watson at nine. Um, so from the Cleveland Browns, he had a bit of trouble. The start of last year was suspended. I can't remember exactly what it was for, something inappropriate. But so he hadn't come back in the back half of the season and looked a bit clunky. But he'll get the full off season practicing with the team. Before his injuries and suspension issues, he was an elite option at quarterback. So he's one that definitely has the upside. I guess the Browns aren't really known as being the best team going around, but if anyone can lift them up, it's Deshaun Watson. At number 10, I've gone with Daniel Jones. So I guess this is probably the last of the mobile quarterback options. Um, at the Giants, he's probably struggles with the fact he doesn't have a lot to throw to, but he does have that rushing upside, which is helpful. So um, back end of the sort of QB1 conversation. At 11, I've gone with Dak Prescott. And I guess the more I look at this, I probably should have switched those two around. Um, so, yeah, we'll go with 11 actually being Tua Tagovailoa from the Miami Dolphins. And with Tua, I guess the reason why I would rate him over Dak is he just has those couple of great options to throw to in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Dak Prescott obviously does have some good options there, such as CeeDee Lamb, but those two I just mentioned from the Dolphins are supreme options. Um, and so I think for that reason, Tua might just finish above Dak. But as you can see, it's pretty close. They're not the most mobile. They can move when they need to, but that's usually not their go-to. So top 12 tight ends. So tight end, it's pretty much number one, Travis Kelsey from the Kansas City Chiefs, and number two really should be Daylight. But yeah, Travis Kelsey is just the main man at the Chiefs. Him and Mahomes have an unreal combination. Um, he just gets so much work, even though he's a bit older and all that sort of thing. He just seems to keep on keeping on. So yeah, he's the only tight end you'd even look at in the first round. After that, you can probably wait a while. Um, but at number two, got Mark Andrews. Um, I think out of the last 7 years, he's the only one that has beaten Travis Kelsey in any given year, and it was just once. Um, but he has a decent quarterback with Lamar Jackson. There's not a lot of wide receiver options there, so he probably is the main target, which is what you are looking for when you look at a tight end. Um, but yeah, there is definitely a dip in quality from Kelsey, even down to Andrews. At number three, TJ Hawkinson, Minnesota Vikings. I did mention him before. He probably was one of the main guys at the Detroit Lions before he made the trade. Uh, and while he probably is second choice receiver after Justin Jefferson, um, the amount of attention that Jefferson covers obviously means, or gets, I should say, definitely means that there is room for TJ Hawkinson to get some targets. So, um, yeah, I'd have him at three. I've got George Kittle at four, but him or Waller could sort of interchange. They've both done pretty well in the past. Kittle's at the 49ers, so there is quite a few other options around him, such as McCaffrey, Debo Samuel, even Elijah Mitchell. Can do some good work out of the backfield. Um, so yeah, he's still one of the better tight ends going around, but you don't need to rush and get him. And Darren Waller, so he's been traded from the Raiders to the Jets this year, and the Jets. Oh no, sorry, the Giants, not the Jets. I've got that wrong. The other New York team. Oops, I knew I'd make a mistake. Yeah, so the New York Giants, and I guess other than Saquon, there's not really a lot of targets or a lot of players that you would target with the ball. So Darren Waller has a good opportunity to get a lot of catches and receptions and all that. Dallas got it at the Eagles. I guess this is probably the one of the last of the I guess what we'd even call elite options. But even then, you're not sort of looking at him until after you've filled out a lot of the rest of your team. He'll do the job at the Eagles, but he is behind AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, uh, maybe even DeAndre Swift. It just remains to be seen how much he can actually get. But when he does get um, targets, he does seem to do well with receptions. So, if you can rely on someone, then it's usually a way to get quite a few points. Number seven got Cole Pitts. So I guess a couple of years ago he was touted as the next big thing in tight ends. Had a lot of injuries last year, which has sort of seen him slide down the rankings. But I guess out of the lesser options after Travis Kelsey, he'd probably be the one I'd take a flyer on, just because he does have that potential of getting the upside. And then after this, we're really starting to even scrape for what we would call top 12 options. I guess if you can't sort of grab one of these guys, top seven early on, I'd almost just wait until the very end and just see what you can get. But I guess to get 12 out there, we've got Njoku from the Cleveland Browns. Had some big spike games last year. So if you're chasing upside, I think he's the player to sort of target a bit later in the drafts. Pat Frymouth from the Steelers, so he proved to be a pretty consistent, option as a target. And then after that, I'm sort of relying on the experts a bit here with Evan Ingram. He's a player I've never really even sort of followed because I guess you've got your elite tight ends and then you've just got whoever, and he's just one that's never really come across my radar. But I think yeah, they're talking about the Jags' chances this year, and he's probably going to be a part of that. At 11, I put Dalton Schultz from the Houston Texans, so a team that probably hasn't popped up yet. Um, he was at the Cowboys last year and has obviously made the move, and he was a pretty decent tight end for them. I guess he'll be limited by the fact that the Texans aren't the best team going around in the league, but he could sort of sneak into the top 12 conversation. And Tyler Higbee from the Rams. Um, Again, he's not one that's really come across my radar too often, but yeah, he does always seem to be at around that sort of 12 position um, overall. So we'll throw him in. And finally, I guess I've got some more flex options. So generally, with most leagues, you'll have a flex position, which is where you can play a wide receiver, a running back, or a tight end. Like I said, if you have a super flex, you can include the quarterbacks in the conversation. But essentially, I just wanted to throw up some more options in terms of wide receiver and running back. Mostly because I don't think, the next 12 options, there's definitely not another tight end in the conversation. There's probably a lot more wide receivers and running backs before we worry about more tight ends. But T. Higgins from the Bengals, I've put at the top of this list. Um, sort of stuck behind Jamar Chase as the number one wide receiver at Cincinnati. But, he always seems to do the business. I remember first year I was drafting, he was one that I ended up just getting on auto draft. Um, and I didn't really know much about him. I thought, I've got two Bengals wide receivers. That won't work out. But it just seemed to, they both score really well most of the time. Obviously, Jamar Chase scores higher, but, T. Higgins doesn't let you down. So, a really good option if you can get him as like your second wide receiver. Jalen Waddle from the Dolphins, very similar story, stuck behind Tyreek Hill. But, he's an excellent wide receiver in his own right. I guess Tyreek Hill takes some heat off him. So Tua's got two great options there to throw to. And again, like T. Higgins, you can have both in the side and they'll both score well, Waddle and Hill. So you don't need to stress there. Devonta Smith at number three, probably seeing a theme here. Wide receiver, stuck behind another wide receiver at his team. But again, it just seems to work. So, those three you could almost sort of put in any order, but they're all great as that second wide receiver option if you can land one of them. After that, I've gone with a few running back options. So Travis Etienne, sorry, from the Jags, Damian Pierce from the Texans, and Aaron Jones from the Packers. So I guess with the Jags, everyone's talking them up. So Etienne, he'll run the ball a lot. Doesn't do a lot of reception work in the passing game, but he'll still create space for those other guys and whatnot. So definitely one to consider including. Damian Pierce, same sort of deal at the Texans. So they probably rely on him a little bit more to run the ball as well, but obviously then doesn't catch as much. And Aaron Jones at the Packers. So they have lost Aaron Rodgers, which may mean that they go to a more run-heavy game with Jordan Love coming in. But also they might just use Aaron Jones as a bit more of a target in the passing game. They do have Christian Watson is probably their main target in terms of wide receivers. But after that, there's not a great deal of depth. So someone like Aaron Jones, he can do a bit of both and is a pretty handy player for your team. Amari Cooper from the Browns. I have mentioned him previously, talking about Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb. You know, he is a number one wide receiver for whatever team he plays for. He did play for the Cowboys, traded to the Browns. Um, so definitely one that commands a lot of targets and therefore a lot of receptions and a lot of fantasy points. DeAndre Hopkins, I have talked about previously as well at the Titans. So, suddenly they do have a really nice wide receiver option that they can target. Um, as I said, it might take away from Derrick Henry. It might actually free Derrick Henry up. It's one of those ones where you could probably get both and they'd be okay. Calvin Ridley from the Jaguars. So he has missed the last couple of years. He was out last year with suspension. I think it was related to betting on games. Before that, he was injured. So he hasn't really played for a while, but when he was playing, he was really good. So, he'll probably end up being the wide receiver one of the Jaguars. It might take him a little while to sort of get in the flow, but all the reports from preseason is it probably won't. So, definitely one you can look at getting in as a bit of a value. Debo Samuel at the 49ers. We talked about the 49ers attack. It's pretty good. Um, he has in the past played as a bit of a hybrid wide receiver that also runs the ball, which was pretty unique. But now they've got Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, hopefully stays fit. So he probably will be more of a wide receiver option. But again, given they've got so many options, you'd imagine that that does free him up somewhat. So he'll definitely get his share of targets and also he was playing through injuries last year too. So I know a lot of people are a bit wary of him, but he should be fit and ready to go. Jerry Judy from the Denver Broncos. So he's one that's sort of been talked up the last couple of years and then has got injured. But Russell Wilson was also injured last year. The talk is he's a lot fitter. So it means, his play should be better, which as a result means the Broncos should be better. And Jerry Judy is probably their number one target, particularly given Tim Patrick did get an injury. So I've got him as a nice flex option. And finally, Alvin Kamara. So I did mention him briefly before. He is going to be suspended for the first few games due to a off-field incident. Um, but once he's back, he is up there with the elite running backs. So I guess the only reason why I wouldn't include him in the top 12 is just because he's not there from the start. But he is one that you could target on your bench and get some really good value out of. Um, I guess probably the other obvious name that hasn't come up yet is Brees Hall. A lot of people have him in their top 12 running backs, and I haven't even got him in my top, what's that, 16. It's just because he's coming back from an ACL. I think he is a good player, but with your drafts, I'd probably wait off on trading him in. I think what will happen is a lot of people will trade him in quite high and then get frustrated when he's not sort of playing at the elite level that they wanted from their top 12 pickup. They'll drop him or look to trade him, and that's when you can pick him up. And then, by the back end of the season, hopefully he's back to 100%. So, yeah, so I've sort of faded Brees Hall. That's the obvious one. But that's the reasoning behind it. But anyway, I'm pretty sure if I click again, that's the end. So, yeah, as always, thank you very much for spending your time having a listen and a watch. I'll go back to the flex. If you've got any thoughts on this, feel free to comment below, or if you've got any questions about it, love to answer all of those. If you are enjoying the content, remember like the video, subscribe to the channel, and other than that, we'll catch you in the next one.